Chapter 13. Ancient History of Israel, the Ottoman Period. The call to prayer echoes through the stony hills of Jerusalem. It is the year 1517. A new empire marches through the city gates. Its banners green and gold, its soldiers fierce and disciplined. For the people of Jerusalem, Muslims, Christians, and Jews alike, this is another turn in the wheel of fate. Crusaders, Mamluks, and conquerors have come before, but this time it is different. The Ottomans have arrived and they will rule here for the next 400 years. The arrival of the Ottomans was not only a moment of conquest, it was the beginning of an era that would reshape Jerusalem and Palestine, an era of both tolerance and restriction, of poverty and renewal, of exile and return. The conquest, the Ottoman Empire entered Palestine after the Battle of Marj Dabik in 1516. The Mamluks, weary and corrupt, fell quickly to the armies of Sultan Selim the Stern. By 1517, Jerusalem, Gaza, and the entire land of Palestine stood under Ottoman authority. But the Ottomans were not like the rulers who had come before. They were not local dynasties or passing conquerors. They were an empire stretching from Arabia to North Africa, from the Balkans to the gates of Vienna. Their power was immense, and their presence would last for centuries. For the people of Jerusalem, this meant a new stability, but also a new kind of imperial control. Suleiman, the Magnificent in 1536, the empire's most celebrated ruler. Suleiman the Magnificent turned his attention to Jerusalem. The city, neglected for decades, lay in decay. Its walls crumbled, its aqueducts failed, and its grandeur seemed a memory. Suleiman ordered a transformation. Massive new stone walls rose to encircle the old city. Gates were constructed with strength and beauty. Aqueducts were repaired, fountains built, and the Dome of the Rock was adorned with its brilliant blue tiles. What had been a forgotten provincial town became once more a city of splendor. Pilgrims arriving from Europe and the Middle East alike marveled at the renewed Jerusalem, now safeguarded by the most powerful empire of its age. Religious tolerance and restriction, the Ottoman approach to governance was pragmatic. They ruled through the millet system, which allowed religious communities to govern much of their internal life. Muslims, Christians, and Jews each maintained their own leaders, courts, and traditions. Christians continued to worship at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, though rival sects often fought bitterly over control. Jews prayed at their synagogues and at the Western Wall, their presence tolerated in a way often denied to them in Christian Europe. Yet tolerance did not mean equality. 9 Muslims were classified as dhimmi, protected but subordinate. They were required to pay the jizya tax. They could not bear arms, and their legal rights were limited compared to Muslims. At times of crisis, resentment could erupt into hostility. Still, compared to the Inquisition of Spain or the restrictions of European ghettos, life under the Ottomans seemed far more secure. The early Jewish return. The 16th century brought an important change. In 1492, Spain had expelled its Jews. Tens of thousands fled across the Mediterranean. Many found refuge in the Ottoman Empire, welcomed for their skills as traders, scholars, and physicians. Some of these Sephardic Jews made their way to Palestine. They joined existing communities in Jerusalem, Hebron, and Safed. Safed, perched in the hills of Galilee, became a thriving center of Jewish mysticism. Rabbi Isaac Luria and his disciples taught a new vision of the Kabbalah, inspiring generations with ideas of cosmic repair and spiritual renewal. In Jerusalem, Jews rebuilt synagogues and strengthened their presence, despite poverty and hardship. The Herva synagogue stood as a symbol of resilience. But life was not easy. Disease and famine struck often. Many Jews depended on donations sent from Jewish communities abroad, known as the Halukah. Without this lifeline, survival would have been nearly impossible. Daily life in Ottoman Palestine, Palestine under Ottoman rule, was a land of contrasts. Fertile fields near Jaffa and Acre produced citrus, olives, and wheat. Bedouin tribes roamed the desert, moving with their herds. Pilgrims from 3 faiths journeyed to holy sites, filling the roads with prayers and songs. But the land was also plagued by hardship. Governors sent from Istanbul often cared little for the province. Taxes were collected harshly, sometimes by corrupt officials who squeezed peasants mercilessly. Banditry plagued the countryside. By the 18th century, Palestine was regarded as a backwater of empire. European travelers described ruined cities and desolate fields. Jerusalem's population dwindled to around 10,000, a fragile mix of Muslims, Christians, and Jews huddled within Suleiman's walls. Yet, despite decline, Jerusalem never lost its aura. To believers across the world, it remained the heart of faith, the place where heaven touched earth. The 19th century awakening, the 19th century changed everything. The Ottoman Empire was weakening, and European powers sought influence in Palestine. Britain, France, and Russia established consulates in Jerusalem. Missionaries built schools and hospitals. Each power used religion as a tool of politics, extending protection to local Christians or Jews. For Jews, this era brought renewal. Philanthropists like Sir Moses Montefiore funded schools, hospitals, and housing. In 1860, the first Jewish neighborhood outside Jerusalem's Old City was built, Mishkanat Shananim. It was a symbol of growth, a step toward the modern city we know today. The Ottomans attempted reforms known as the Tanzimat. New laws promised equality for all subjects, Muslim and non-Muslim alike. Railroads were built, telegraph lines installed, and modern administration introduced. Yet the reforms often remained more promise than reality. Old patterns of discrimination and corruption lingered. Still, the seeds of change had been planted. The rise of Zionism and the end of empire. By the late 19th century, Jewish immigration began to increase. Pogroms in Russia and growing anti-Semitism in Europe drove thousands to seek refuge in Palestine. They were inspired by the new movement of Zionism, which called for a return to the ancestral homeland. These pioneers established agricultural colonies, purchased land, and revived Hebrew as a spoken language. For the Ottomans, this was both opportunity and challenge. The newcomers brought investment and energy, but their growing presence threatened to disturb the delicate balance among the communities of Palestine. Ottoman authorities alternated between permitting and restricting Jewish immigration, never fully able to control the situation. Then came the First World War. The Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers. Palestine became a theater of war. British troops advanced from Egypt, while Arab revolts challenged Ottoman rule from within. In December 1917, British General Edmund Allenby entered Jerusalem. The Ottoman banners were lowered. After 4 centuries, their rule in Palestine was over. The Ottoman centuries are often overlooked, hidden between the drama of the Crusades and the upheavals of the modern age. Yet they were essential. For 400 years, the empire preserved Jerusalem as a city of faiths. It held together fragile communities and allowed exiles, especially Jews, to find refuge in their ancestral land.
No.
The Ottomans ruled with both tolerance and inequality. They sheltered minorities, but always reminded them of their subordinate status. Their neglect left the land impoverished, yet their endurance provided stability that made possible the later transformations of the 19th century. And in their final century, as Europe pressed into the region, Palestine began its modern awakening that would lead directly into the struggles of the 20th century. For centuries of Ottoman rule passed like a long shadow across Jerusalem and Palestine. When the banners of empire fell in 1917, the land stood at the threshold of a new and turbulent era. The stage was set for conflicts and hopes that would shape the modern Middle East and that continue to echo to this very day.